Hey there, macro folks. This is Mr. Hooker. We're going to do the third video of unemployment inflation, and I believe we're going to finish this chapter here. I do want to start off by saying I did look up the labor force participation rate for August 2025. It was 63.2, or no, 62.3%, excuse me. So 62.3%. So a little higher than I thought it would be, but that's where we are right um, or at least at that moment in time. So that's the latest reading um, when I'm looking it up here. Uh, Late September, it was 62.3%. So natural rate of unemployment. So there's always going to be some employment. We mentioned you're always going to have people that are leaving jobs, moving across country, moving next state over, whatever. They're going to be between jobs, and you're always going to have new technology coming out, whatever, that's going to make some jobs just out of date. So you have some frictional and structural unemployment that is going to always exist. That's just going to be part of the economy. So that we call natural unemployment. What we are aiming for is what we call zero cyclical unemployment. And when we have that, we are what we call fully employed. And at full employment, we have the natural rate of unemployment. So full employment and natural rate of unemployment are equal. It's weird, but it is true. So the natural rate of unemployment is the normal unemployment rate around which everything else fluctuates, also called full employment, say. So it's just frictional plus structural unemployment and zero cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment is just the deviation of the actual unemployment, of the actual rate of unemployment from the natural rate. Um, so actual unemployment is just natural unemployment plus cyclical unemployment. So those are those people that you get otherwise. Changes in that natural rate. So, um, need to estimate the natural rate of unemployment to make forecasts and to conduct policy. So, what is it? In the modern economy, it is somewhere between 4 and 6%. Way back in the day, it was between 3 and 5. So, today it's between 4 and 6. What causes it to change? Any change in characteristic of the labor force, which would be changes in demographics, changes in population, labor markets, unions, temp agencies, technology, and changes in government policies. So I think the big thing that caused it to change from back when I was young to now is population and demographics. So more people. So changing makeup of the U.S. labor force, 50 to present. Some of the changes in the 70s, large numbers of women joining the labor force, and the baby boomers were reaching um, the working age. So you see under 25 taking a dive, but women rising. So like I said, women are actually employed more than men. I believe I said that in the last video. Uh, so they have an unemployment rate below that of an unemployment rate below men's unemployment rate. But young people basically are always have a high unemployment rate. It's just a thing. And young men now 18 to 25, which usually at 18 to 25, that's where you have a lot of people joining the market, and that's typically a lower unemployment rate. But right now, young men 18 to 25 have a very high unemployment rate. Go figure. So which of these statements is true? Natural rate of unemployment equals a country's unemployment rate during a recession? Nah. Natural rate of unemployment is the sum of frictional and structural unemployment? Yeah. Natural rate of unemployment is the sum of frictional and cyclical? Nah. Natural rate of unemployment is the sum of structural and cyclical? Nah. So there you go. B. Inflation and deflation. They're missing one here, and I'll talk about that in a second. It's the one we're hoping for right now. So inflation is just an increase in the general price level. The most common complaint is inflation makes everybody poor because money buys less. Um, but inflation does not make everyone poor because incomes often rise with prices. That is not what we have seen in this round. Wages have not kept up with inflation over the last 3 years, so people are a little upset with that. But typically, yes, incomes rise with the price levels, and it's just a thing that typically has to happen because if it doesn't, people can't buy the goods that you're trying to sell them. And if they can't buy the goods, you have an issue. So there's a whole thing. Like you need people to have the money to buy the goods so that you can make the goods and have people buy the goods. So if you don't, then this whole cycle falls apart. It's kind of crazy, right? Um, so the level of prices don't really matter. The real wage is the wage rate divided by the price level. And real income is income divided by the price level. So real income is not money. Don't think of real income as money. Think of real income as stuff. How much stuff can you buy with your paycheck? So how much stuff can you put in the buggy as you go shopping, right? That is um, basically real income. So as prices rise, if your paycheck does not, your real income falls. If your paycheck rises but prices stay relatively constant, your real income is rising. And so, um, or if prices just fall in general. So that's a thing. Your real income will rise. So the more stuff you can buy, your real income rises. The less stuff you can buy, your real income falls. So think of real income in terms of what is it that I can buy with the paycheck, with a weekly paycheck, biweekly paycheck, monthly paycheck, however you get paid. Think of it in those terms. Um, so the rise in prices in the U.S. since '60s hadn't made the country poorer because it always also raised incomes by about the same amount. So prices don't really matter. The increase in prices over the last 3 years have not kept up. Incomes have not kept up with those. So prices have gone up about 6, 7%, and incomes have gone up about 3.5%. So there's some issues, and people know there's some issues. The government knows there's some issues, um, and there's some things to that. And economists know there's some issues. There's also a lot of tension over those issues. So there are things there. There are a lot of things there that people are kind of glossing over because it's one of those things that we've seen in history and it has not gone well in history, and we're hoping it does not go that same way currently. Um, the rate of change of the prices matters. So the level of prices doesn't matter, but the inflation rate matters. So the inflation rate is basically just a simple percentage change formula. So new minus old divided by old times 100. We're going to use that formula a lot in this class, so just if you know it, it's great. New minus old divided by old times 100. So if the CPI increases from 120 to 135 over 1 year, the inflation rate is 135 minus the 120 divided by 120 times 100 or 12.5%. And that is one insane inflation rate, right? So 12.5 annualized is crazy. Um, you thought 6% was bad annualized. 12.5 would drive people nuts. Although anything over 50 is what we call hyperinflation. So price level versus the inflation rate. Um, Price level is continuously increased, so that's the graph there on your left. The inflation rate is basically up and down. So the inflation rate will go up and then it'll go down and go up and down. So a decrease in the inflation rate is considered disinflation. So inflation rate goes up, that's inflation. Inflation rate goes down, that is disinflation. And that's what we're looking for right now. We are hoping right now for some disinflation. We would like the inflation rate to go down. So if your inflation rate was 5 this year and next year it is 3, you have disinflation of 2%. Okay? Now, you see there where it goes below 0 there on the right, that's deflation. That is a fall in the general level of prices. not a fall in the inflation rate, but a decrease in the full level of prices, general level of prices, that is not something you want. Period. No, not at all. That will cause us to circle the toilet. So what happens is prices of the general level of prices go down, producers receive less for their goods, and in turn, they basically react by laying people off who now have less income, and as they have less income, they spend less, and because they're spending less, producers receive less in year two, so they lay off more people. Those people spend less, so in year three, producers receive less. They lay off more people who in turn spend less, and this just keeps circling down and down and down until something happens, typically government intervention, and we start going back up. All right. So your cost of inflation, high rates of inflation impose a lot of costs. You got the shoe leather cost, the increased cost of transactions when everybody's running around trying to avoid holding money because you don't want to hold money for very long since it's not worth very much. The menu cost is the cost of changing prices on a board or menu. Um, Count cost, unit of account cost from the way inflation makes money a less reliable unit of measurement. Um, can't calculate things really hard when inflation is high. So in the Weimar Republic, back in Germany after World War One, money was useless between World War One and World War Two. So the workers asked to be paid hourly. They would take the money to the gates, hand it to their wives. Their wives would go to the store, buy stuff. No prices on anything because the price was changing hourly, if not faster. And they would buy stuff, take it home, go back to the gates, get the money from their husbands, go to the store, buy, and keep going. That's the only way that they could afford to eat at night. And then you see the picture of the Zim dollar. That is that $100 trillion bill is the largest bill ever printed. Um, and they also have one out there, $100 million bill that has a date on it. So the thing only it was um, a note that actually was only good for 6 months. $100 million, you had 6 months to spend it. And in US dollars, it was worth like $3 or something like that. It was terrible. What was crazy in this one was worth like, what was this one worth? It was not worth much. When they printed it, it was worth less than $5. When they printed the one that was dated, it was worth like $2 or $3. And then it fell and it was worth less than $1 really quickly. And then when they printed this one, it was worth like 2 or 3. But they sent kids to the bridges between Zimbabwe and South Africa, and as the tourists crossed the bridge, the kids would sell them these notes for $5. And people thought it was cool that they had $100 trillion for five. They got $100 trillion for $5. They didn't know they were getting taken by these little kids. It was a crazy thing that happened. You could search Zim dollar sign, and there's a sign that used to be in South African toilets that said toilet paper only, no cardboard, no newspaper, no Zim dollars. It was crazy. Like people, it was bad. Um, so who wins? Who loses? So as far as interest rates, the return the lender receives for allowing borrowers to use their savings, um, the nominal interest rates, the interest rate expressed in dollar terms, and the real interest rate's the nominal interest rate minus the rate of inflation. So you got to look at it. So if you when you enter into loan, it specifies the nominal interest rate, but each party has an expectation about the future rate of inflation. What really matters is not that, but what the actual rate of inflation is. And if it's higher than expected, borrowers win because they repay their loans with funds that have a lower value. This is why the U.S. government borrows so much money. If it's lower than expected, lenders win, so borrowers repay with funds that have a higher value than was expected. That happens very rarely. Let me just point this out. So that uncertainty about future inflation discourages people from entering into long-term contracts. Although right now, some entities are issuing what they call millennium debt. It is 100-year bonds. To me, that is insane. But they are doing it. Hey, more power to you. Practice question 6. Mary expects the inflation rate to be 5%, willing to pay a real interest rate of 3%. Joe expects the inflation rate to be 5%, and he's willing to lend money if he receives a real interest rate of 3%. Actual inflation rate is 6%. Loan contract specifies a nominal interest rate of 8%. Um, and then Joe is glad he lent out funds even though real interest rate has fallen. Joe is sorry he lent out funds since his real interest rate is now 9%. Mary's glad she borrowed the funds because her real interest rate has fallen. Mary is sorry she borrowed funds. Mary is happy. Her real interest rate has gone down. So disinflation is bringing the inflation rate down. So it's a decrease in the inflation rate, as I mentioned earlier. Two major periods of disinflation happened in the 70s and early 80s. It's difficult and costly because it requires a temporary but large increase in the unemployment rate. So it's kind of crazy how that works. You've just been awarded a cost of living increase tied to the CPI. CPI went to 110 to 112. If your salary is 30,000 per year before the increase, what will it be after the CPI increase is factored in? It'll be that 30,545. And you really don't have to do the math on that so much. That's it. We'll see you in chapter 9.